Hello, my name is Emily Vito, and I am the Assistant Director of Development with Film at Lincoln Center. Along with our friends at Focus Features, we are thrilled to present a conversation about Promising Young Woman, featuring the film's director, producer, and screenwriter, Emerald Fennell, and executive producer and star, Carey Mulligan, both of whom have been nominated for Academy Awards for their work on the film, which has also been nominated for Best Picture. The conversation today is moderated by Jenelle Riley, Deputy Awards and Features Editor at Variety. Before we get started, I'd like to thank you for your support of Film at Lincoln Center. We are so excited to reopen our theaters on April 16th with screenings of Azazel Jacobs' French Exit and a restoration of Andrei Tarkovsky's Mirror, on sale now. I hope you'll be joining us for our 50th anniversary of New Directors' New Films, with screenings both online and in theaters from April 28th through May 8th. We'll also have free screenings looking back on 50 years of NDNF in our virtual cinema from April 16th through April 27th. And now, please enjoy a special intro from Geena Davis, followed by a conversation with Emerald Fennell, Carey Mulligan, and Jenelle Riley.
Good evening, everyone. I hope you enjoyed tonight's screening of Promising Young Woman as much as I did. At the Institute on Gender and Media, we aim to see more films with women, both behind and in front of the camera, like Emerald and Carey's Promising Young Woman. To see a film like this one that jolts us all to think about how women are so often marginalized and victimized by biases that have long been ingrained and deemed acceptable. I can't wait to hear from the film's brilliant artists. I'm thrilled to introduce tonight's moderator, Jenelle Riley.
Thank you so much, Geena, for that lovely introduction. My name is Jenelle Riley. I'm an editor at Variety, and welcome to this Film at Lincoln Center Q&A with Promising Young Woman. At this time, please join me in welcoming the two Academy Award nominated artists who brought this film to life: writer, director, producer Emerald Fennell and star Carey Mulligan. Thank you both so much for being here.
Thank you for having us, and thank you to Geena. I think one of the greatest ever. Earth Girls Are Easy is I think probably the film that made me want to make films. I loved it so much.
That's so cool. That's where I first discovered Jim Carrey.
Yeah, really. I think it was where I first discovered everything. Marabou, Pink, Jeff Goldblum, Aliens. I mean, it's just so magical. What a film.
Oh, great stuff. Congratulations on a fantastic movie, a great year. Whenever I have people as accomplished as you are, I actually like to go back to the beginning, because we all started somewhere, and ask, what was your first job in this business? The first time you felt you could call yourself an actor or a writer director? Because Emerald, did you start with acting or writing?
Well, my first job in the business was actually working for, coincidentally, Carey's agent, Victoria Belfridge, as an assistant. So when I was 18, after I left school, I went in as a temp, I think for a couple of weeks, and then managed to stay somehow by hook or by crook, managed to stay for, nearly the whole year. And it was just, I think Carey maybe had just joined or was just about to join. And I loved it. I mean, I did end on a slightly disgraceful note. I got a bit overexcited at the office party, and on my last day ended up throwing up in the bin next to my desk, and I was told very gently and kindly by poor Victoria that it'd probably be better if I went home. That I didn't need to do my last day. So that was my first job.
That's amazing. Carey, what about for you? Because right out of the gate, you were an acclaimed actress.
Oh, I don't know about that. I mean, I that's so funny about tour. That's also that I have to say that kind of behavior is encouraged at those parties. So I think Emerald was pretty much just doing her duties. But yeah, I got incredibly lucky. Auditioned for Pride and Prejudice, and Joe Wright, who directed that film, was sort of looking for probably a couple of people who hadn't done. I think Tallulah Riley and I were both. It was both our first jobs, and wanted sort of very young looking girls. That sounds so strange. Sorry, jet lag is kicking in. Who wanted people who had sort of no profile really. So I very, very, very luckily got that job, and then just, you know, was in this extraordinary cast with these extraordinary actors and got to sort of play a very minor part and learn a lot from watching people. So it was an incredibly lucky first gig.
I mean, I feel like a lot of film acting is on the job training, so that's a great place to start.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was just, you know, really not just the most extraordinary actors, but also a cast of incredibly lovely people who sort of showed me how it was done in terms of how to, you know, how to behave on set and everything. Kira was so amazing. So it was, yeah, very, very brilliant stuff.
So Emerald, I'd like to believe that this has been, you know, a long game where you've always known you wanted to work with Carey, even when you were working for her agent. You just waited till the right time. But I would love to talk about what sort of prompted Promising Young Woman. I mean, it's probably the most talked about film of the year. It's funny, tragic, smart. Where did it begin?
I think it began in a very nebulous way, which is, I think I was just thinking about growing up and the kind of behavior that was just, and still is, regrettably, kind of just allowed. The treatment of girls and young women at parties, in clubs, the use of alcohol and drugs and kind of seducing them. And it just always sat so horribly. And it's one of those things that's very difficult to articulate because it's so endemic. But you know, what happens usually for me is, if I've been thinking about something for a long time, a kind of, I don't know, a little moment or something will occur to me that maybe that illustrates a point, perhaps. And for me, it was, you know, a very, very, very drunk girl lying on a bed as someone undresses her, asking him, "What are you doing?" drunkenly, and then suddenly sitting up sober and looking him dead in the eye and saying, "What are you doing?" And I think for me, that illustrated everything I feel about this, which is that, you know, you only know that something is, well, we all know that this is wrong, of course. But the thing is that if there's nothing, if it's just a grey area and there's nothing too terrible about it, then why would somebody be so frightened to be caught in the act of it, you know? And I think it just, that felt to me like the beginning of something really interesting and, you know, personal, I think, to so many of us who grew up, I mean, in pretty much any era, but certainly, you know, the last 20 years or what have you.
I mean, having seen the movie multiple times, probably too many times, I can't imagine anyone else in this role. But I think in casting Carey, some people would think you were casting against type based on her previous work, which, you know, was largely in corsets. Was that part of the appeal of casting her? And Carey, was that part of the appeal of taking the role?
Well, I mean, just to speak to casting quickly, I mean, it's funny with Carey because I think if we do think of her in corsets, it might be because I suppose Suffragette and Far From the Madding Crowd are still quite vivid in our imaginations, or maybe even sort of Wildlife, which was period, even if it was a bit more recent. But certainly when I think of Carey, I think of the first time I was really like, I was always aware of her and how brilliant she was, but I think of Never Let Me Go and Drive and, you know, even Wall Street, Money Never Sleeps, which, I mean, you know, but all of these modern films, and Shame, you know, for me, Shame was just one of the greatest performances of the last 20 years. And so I have never really thought of her particularly as a period actress, but what I love about her is how enigmatic I think she is, not as person, unfortunately, as person. She's really quite, goes into quite a lot of detail, but you know, as an actress, she does it. She disappears completely, and then she goes away. And I think the character of Cassie needed an actress who was going to not give a fuck what anyone thought, who wasn't going to pander to the audience, who wasn't going to pander to the genre or the storyline or our ideas of empowerment or badassery, all of this very complicated stuff that's sort of imposed, I think, still on women for all sorts of reasons. I just desperately wanted somebody who would come in and play the truth of it, which was that this person is distraught, struggling, often cruel in the face of something that she can't come to terms with, and that, you know, needed somebody with, I don't want to say balls because that's certainly the wrong word for this film. It needed someone with massive ovaries.
That's the best description I've ever heard. And Carey, for you, was it, I don't want to say, you know, fun to read on the page, but it is, you know, above all, entertainment. It's a really great script.
Oh, it was really fun. Yeah. I mean, it was so, you're always waiting to read something where it just completely, you just instinctively know that you want to do it. You know, that anytime I've ever sort of had to talk myself into something or even think about it for very long, it hasn't been the right thing. And with this, it was just that I just read it and thought, well, I can't, no one else can. Millions of people could do this, but I'm not going to let anyone else do this because it's so good. And I just, it was such an extraordinary role, and it was fun, you know. But it's a funny thing with this stuff because, yes, of course, you know, when you tackle dramatic things and difficult things like we do in this film, you know, it is challenging. But it's the kind of challenging that's just the best if you're an actor. It's the stuff that you are looking to do. It's, you want to go to the extremes of human experience and do things that you've never done before and do things that, you know, you don't recognize in yourself. And, you know, so there was so much about it that just jumped out and was sort of equal parts terrifying and exhilarating. And I just never read anything like it. And, you know, I don't think there has been anything like it.
It's interesting because Cassie has so many different personas. It like, I think just watching it, it's amazing watching, you know, the way that she speaks to Alison Brie's character and the way she speaks to the dean and then the way she is with her parents. There's so many layers. It's so complex. This may sound silly, but did you ever have trouble keeping track? Because I know this was a short shoot and you're probably veering from one emotion to the next and scene to scene.
I didn't. I mean, we were doing sort of, yeah, I remember one day we did Molly Shannon in the morning and Alfred Molina in the afternoon, because I remember thinking this is the coolest day ever that we have both of these actors in on the same day and we're doing these, you know, quite different scenes. No, I didn't, because in a way I kind of gave over the whole journey of it to Emerald. You know, that's what's so brilliant about when you have proper trust of your director, that, you know, you kind of don't need to think big picture as much. That's and certainly my experience on this was just sort of focusing on the moment and on the scenes. And Em had a very kind of, you know, she had the whole picture in her mind, not just visually and story-wise, but also performance-wise. So I felt it was just, yeah, it was nice to just go in and play with. And I knew that she kind of had me in those, you know, so I wasn't ever going to sort of suddenly veer massively off track, I don't think.
And I think that, you know, the thing that's so brilliant about Carey's performance is actually she is playing a part, but she's always Cassie. You know, from the first moment, from that first moment when she sits up and she's sober, and we know what the game is, or at least we start to become familiar with the rules of the game. We can see her always. We can see her in that scene with Alison Brie. We can see her in the moment that Neil sticks his fingers in her mouth to put cocaine on her gums. We see her, and that's just such a deft performance, because it would be very tempting to do a kind of transformation, actually, to play a full Valley girl, to play full whatever it was, whatever the part is, but really she's always there, and we always know it's her. And it's that, I think, is the cleverness and the honesty of the performance. It's not, there would have, I suppose, could have been a version of really chewing the furniture with each of those scenes, which would have, I mean, been very fun to watch. But you know, she's we can feel her in there. We feel her anger in all of those scenes, no matter how cheerful she's being. I think that's what makes it so compelling.
Absolutely. Deft is a great word for it. I'm going to steal that. I mean, the entire film, and Cassie in particular, have such a specific look, one that you might not expect from a story that ultimately goes to some dark places. Can you talk about how you wanted the film to look?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think so many of the films that I love are kind of beautiful, but horrific. I think, I mean, the most obvious one with regards to this film is something like Night of the Hunter, which is one of my favorite ever films. And obviously I can put in this film just as a kind of homage, but also because it's an allegorical film. It's a very stylized film. It is a film that feels made and like a sort of story, but it's also unbelievably moving and profound and real, and the fear, your emotional response to it is real. And then I think of something like The Shining, which is, in anyone else's hands would have just been a straightforward horror movie, but it is a sort of, it's troubling on a level. Its beauty is what makes it so troubling and has kind of made it endure. And so I think really when it was about making this film, this is a film about one woman's life and it's very specific, but it is also kind of allegory. And so it needed to be grounded in this incredible performance, this very honest performance. But I think we needed to know that these were, that there was something about it that was like reasonably expressive. And I think that's why film is such an amazing medium, because you can be a little bit more metaphorical and you can be visual, and people, I think more receptive to it.
And Carey, you can do so much research into a part, but when you actually show up on set and, they give you this clothing and your hair and these, Easter candy nails, does that all help you sort of step into the character of Cassie?
Yeah, massively. I mean, I've definitely sort of dabbled in quite heavy research stuff for jobs before. I would say probably less on this because it, it felt so sort of, everything about it just, even though the script was such a new and unique way of looking at this stuff, the subject matter, the core of what we're looking at here is just something that's so sort of painfully familiar to all of us. So much of this for me was talking through who Cassie was and who Nina was with Emerald. So that was sort of a lot of what the prep was. And then, the bulk of the very limited time that we had in prep was spent in costume fittings and hair and makeup fittings. So it was, really sort of working with Emerald and Nancy on Cassie's look was a huge part of, figuring out who she was and how to play those different sort of personas and those evening kind of. We've done a year of press of this, and I still can't figure out the way to say what I keep calling it things like ventures, which
I say excursions. Which seems wrong. Hard to describe. I mean, it's
yeah. Well, exactly. So yeah, it was a big part, and particularly the nails and the hair extensions, which my daughter proudly paraded me around sort of I think we went to the Children's Museum or something after the first week of filming. She said, "This is my mummy, she's Barbie." So she loved it. It does, it's all because it's all disguise, it's all helpful, it's all her armor.
Are you prepared? I suspect that this Halloween, we're going to see a lot of Cassie nurses. Will that be, sort of cool to you or strange?
No, so cool.
So cool.
So cool. Yeah.
Because also, I think, men get so many cool costumes.
Thank you. Yeah.
They've got Batman. They've got all the kick-ass ones. And so it's good to also, there's something kind of pleasurably subversive about taking the kind of kinky nurse's uniform and making it a source of fear rather than arousal is probably will be quite good on Halloween.
I think the broken heart necklace is going to be a key part of that.
Oh God, yeah. We thought the wig would be. I hope that they incorporate shorts for modesty.
Of course, because I was wearing probably
2
pairs of pants, and pants in English, as in underwear, and about 3 pairs of Spanx or shorts or things underneath that.
We were I think that's the thing about filming any scene like that, especially when you're a woman, and it's like, I think as a female director, it's a different experience. We knew with that push in where we were going to be, and you've got to be so careful how you shoot these things and how you shoot women's bodies and things. So it was a really big consideration for all of us and for Nancy in making the costume and me in shooting it, that we weren't going to be getting into some kind of extremely inappropriate territory, I guess.
Well, especially, the scene in the cabin on the bed, which is done, in one brutally long take. I'm really sort of curious how you prepared for that. It looks, it looks so natural. It's not the word, but organic. But I have to imagine a lot of planning went into that.
I suppose, absolutely. I think in the writing, certainly the thing that I knew was that it needed to be one shot and it needed to be the time it actually takes to do this deed. Because I think, so often in films you just see it for 20 seconds and it's done and it lets you off the hook. And I think, and having that kind of long push in was really important and kind of unsparing, and especially that we're pushing in on him and not on her, that we kind of lose her. And so it took a lot of pre-planning in the sense just setting up the shot. It meant we had to find a location where we could take the wall out. We had to take the wall of the cabin out so that we had lots and lots of extra space to move in, and we had to kind of move build the dolly as we went along. So there's a kind of practical considerations, and then then the safety considerations, which were huge, obviously, because if you're doing a take in real time that would take as long as it takes to smother someone, you've got to make really very, very, very sure that there can't be any accidents, because you wouldn't know the difference until it was too late. So we were incredibly careful. And then, and so then we got the stunt team in, and Carey, you can take it from there.
We had an amazing stunt team who were able to show us essentially how to do it safely and do it in a way where we could be in control of it. But also as actors, firstly, you always want to do your own stunts, I think, unless it's sort of jumping out of a building. I think, actors I know always want to do it and always think it's a really great idea, and then get into it and think, why did I want to do this? This is awful. But we, Chris and I both really wanted to do it. So we had a run through with the stunt team who sort of showed us, in the full 2.5 minute time period, what it would look like, and then sort of talked us through how they had made it look so effective. And it was just horrible. Yeah. It's just one of those moments on set, and the whole crew sort of watched, and everyone was just sort of, it was very somber and upsetting and difficult. And there were very few days like that on this film. Even though there's difficult subject matter, there was a lot of lightness and a lot of fun. And that was just one of those days that was just a bit miserable. But yeah, so they kind of walked us through it, and we, and you want to sort of fight for your life a bit. So it was quite kind of physically tiring in a way that I wasn't expecting it to be, because you kind of use as much force as you can without actually doing damage to the other person. But it's the sort of fine line, I think, with all of those things. And of course, we had a mishap take where I mistimed the moment where I was meant to look away, and the pillow did cover my mouth and my nose for a little moment, and I was really reluctant to call cut because I wanted Emerald to get the take, and it was an annoying reset. So I sort of had about 10 seconds of thinking, like, I can get out of this. I think I'll be fine. I'll be fine. I can. Oh no, I really can't breathe at all. And so we had to stop it, and I was sort of shocked at how emotional it made me afterwards. That it's, and I think it was just reflecting on the, how upsettingly common and real all of this stuff is, and how real it felt to watch it happen to the stunt team. So yeah, it was just one of those really tricky days that, and all credit to our incredible crew, because they could not have been more laser focused and pin drop silent on that day, and they were for everything, but particularly that day it was a very tricky one to do, and they were just incredible.
You also have the most amazing ensemble, and it feels like everybody is there because they want to be there. Not because you were throwing money at them or something. And I have to imagine that really helped the atmosphere on set. I would think just having Bo Burnham around would, make every day a joy.
Yeah, he's, just a delight, but everyone is. And Carey is. I think the real thing is that number one on the call sheet sets the tone. And if you've got someone who's on their phone all the time, or they're in their, there's the temptation, of course, because you've got so much going on, because you're so emotionally invested and you're tired, to go back to your trailer, to decompress, all that kind of stuff, which I completely understand. But it's also I think that's quite an alienating thing for actors to do sometimes. And the thing about Carey was that she was always there, always on set, always talking to everyone. And it meant for all the actors coming in, there was a real like guiding hand. And yeah, they're all just amazing. And they're comedians and who don't often get to do kind of dramatic roles. And so, but they're all incredibly talented actors. It was just the best. I mean, Jennifer Coolidge, she's been my idol since I was a child, like, the greatest ever comic actress. And so, having people like her come in, just amazing.
I mean, you probably suspected the film would spark a lot of conversation, but I've actually been pleasantly surprised at how overwhelmingly positive the response has been. I mean, I didn't expect my mother to love this movie so much. She loves this movie. And I was sort of prepared to have arguments with people about it. And most people seem to love it the way I do. Did that surprise you? Or maybe that's not been your experience, I should say. I'm talking about mine.
Yeah, I've been really happy, and I suppose slightly surprised by how kind of, how broad the audience is that it's hit in a way, and the people that really respond to it. I think there's definitely a world where I sort of imagined, this would somewhat be really, really embraced by, women maybe, and, young women, and it's just, I think it's just been so much more kind of, yeah, I mean, I've had kind of really lovely responses from also like, uncles and, sort of my brother and his friends and, all sorts of, and I think, with real passion for the film and real excitement around it. And I think that's just, I love that about the response to it. It's been, it's been very, very kind of exciting to see how it's reached so many people, because of course, it doesn't serve the same purpose if it just reaches the people who are already thinking about this kind of stuff quite a lot and talking about it quite a lot. It really starts to work if it's going to people who, maybe haven't, had these things, had these discussions, recently.
Yeah, and it's been interesting because I think actually because we're at home, a lot of people have ended up watching it with their families.
Yeah.
And I think it sounds as though from the kind of what I've heard, it really does sound like every single person. It's really the thing, I suppose you make a film because you want to talk about something, and you've been thinking about something and you want to try and, express it in some way. And so the idea that lots of people are talking to their dads, their dads about stuff they never talked about, not that people should feel forced to, but I think, in the conversations happening in England at the moment, where the film actually hasn't come out yet, but we've got this unbelievable movement over here of women and girls talking about their experience at schools. And it's just, it's just so distressing, but it's also remarkable that they're starting to talk about it. I think that's what's changing so fast in such an incredible way over the last few years, like just not being too embarrassed or whatever it is to talk about it. That's the thing.
It also must be really rewarding, because I know that at an early screening, a fight broke out that I believe you were there for. And in one way, that's great. People are passionate about it. People are expressing themselves. But, did you sort of worry that there'd be more of that? And did this, adoration catch you off guard?
Oh, sorry. I think, well, first it was the only test screening and the only one of two. The other screening was the premiere at Sundance. So there were two screenings I attended. I think the thing is it would have been really thrilling if I'd set out to be a provocateur, which, in spite of, I know some people might disagree, but that really is not what I ever wanted to do with this film. I wanted to make something that felt very honest to me. And so I think that there were lots of people who are incredibly experienced in Hollywood, and of course their initial thought was like, well, this is thrilling, because actually to have any kind of visceral reaction is so rare, and this is great. But for me, you know, when this is something very personal that you take such great care over, and it was during the Cassie's death scene, which is such an important scene, to have a kind of huge fight happening in front of the screen was, yeah, it was kind of, I understood it, but it was also kind of it was a different experience for me. I didn't kind of take much pleasure in it, you know, because it is, as you say, actually, I really, and we really all wanted in every department to make this film as accessible as possible. You know, it can't be right all the time. It can't speak to everyone's experience, but it can be, you know, it can, you know, at least touch on some of these things a bit. And yeah, so I'm glad it hasn't been quite as provocative, I suppose, as it might have been.
Carey, were you there for that screening, or did you just hear about it?
No, I heard about it and I was like, wicked, that's great. Definitely want people fighting. That's a great response. She was like, no.
Well, I think people really come to care about Cassie. They really do. And you know, that's a great thing.
It is. I think it's, you know, I think also it's having to come to terms. There's a funny thing about making anything, and whether you're writing, whether you're acting, whatever, there's also a kind of third way, which is that people want the film to be the film they wanted. You know, that's kind of partly what Promising Young Woman plays with, and, you know, and it uses our expectations and kind of plays with them. And so, of course, if you're going to subvert expectations in a way that is surprising, then often people are going to be like, but this isn't what I wanted, this isn't what I signed up for. You know, you see it a lot, I think, with you know, like TV series, things like that. People kind of, and all of us, like, I remember, like, Pacey, it was Pacey forever. You know, if there was ever going to be a hint of Dawson, I was like going to lose my mind. But, you know, and so I kind of totally get it. But it's this funny thing of like, you make the thing you make, and it can never be perfect for everyone, sadly.
I am also Team Pacey, so I hear you.
Dawson, I know he's a very talented filmmaker now in his own right.
Well, I want to thank you both so much for being here. Thank you so much for this film. I can't wait to see what you do next, and I hope you guys work together soon.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.